So about 4 years ago, I got my hands on my first electric smoker from Masterbuilt, and then from there I had tried to smoke salmon, turkey, tri-tips, and a variety of other things. But it wasn't until one Sunday I was at church, a good friend of mine actually asked me, "Hey, have you tried smoking brisket before?" And being new to smoked barbecue, I was like, no, what's the big deal about brisket? And so he told me to research some things, and I went online, and of course I'm watching some of these old Franklin videos and these tutorials about how to make brisket, and I was like, oh wow, like this is a very involved process. It's way more involved than any of the cooks I had ever done. And so within a few weeks of doing some research, I picked up my first brisket, put it in the electric smoker, and this is what I got. As you can see from this cook, the brisket is was incredibly dry. Gosh, it looks like I cooked this thing up to maybe 215 degrees, if not more. But I will tell y'all, like, it wasn't good for anything. Like, I immediately Googled, what can I use, like, bad brisket for? And people were like, well, you can throw it in chili or whatever it is, or you can slice it up super thin and still salvage it. But this was not salvageable. Like, I tried putting it in chili. It was, like, super dry in the chili. It wasn't good for anything. So, I mean, ever since that time, I have been chasing this Franklin brisket. And today, in this video, I get to do a comparison with a brisket that I make with the 4 years of journeying and learning that I've done. I get to take that brisket and pit it up against one of Franklin's. Oh, hey, also, before we actually fully dive into the video, some of you who've been watching some of my videos might notice that something's missing behind me. I still have my Weber Performer, I still have my pit barrel, but what is missing over here is actually my Camp Chef woodwind grill. I did sell it to a very nice person here in the Bay Area. Hopefully he'll get a lot more use out of it, but I've decided to actually part ways with the pellet grill for now, and primarily actually to help fund what is coming to replace my Oklahoma Joes behind me. And you'll also notice that I have a Cuisinart 360 griddle XL, and I've done a few cooks on it so far, primarily smash burgers and some breakfast. A review on that is coming really soon. That's also a really fun gadget, but anyhow, stay tuned. So that's my update. Okay, so back to this comparison test. So for this day, I invited a few friends over for dinner, and my goal was this. I was gonna take a Franklin brisket that I had ordered, and I'm gonna heat it up per the instructions, and I was gonna take a CreamCo brisket, which is a place nearby here in Oakland that also sources their briskets from the same place, same ranch that Franklin gets his, which is Creekstone. And I was basically going to take all of my tricks and things like that and drop them all into this brisket, and then basically take both briskets, slice them up, and do a blind taste test with my friends just to see if they could tell the difference. Okay, so I went ahead and listed the various steps that I took to prepare my brisket and put them in the description just so you could follow along. And actually, if you have advice on maybe things I could tweak or maybe things I haven't tried before, feel free to drop those in the comments as well. I do read all the comments, and I do my best to actually respond to every single comment that comes through, so I really appreciate those. And so coming back to this, I wanted to basically take this CreamCo brisket that I got, season it up, just straight up salt and pepper, using some oak wood, and smoke this on the Oklahoma Joes. I also then put it into a long rest in the oven, and I believe it was about 8.5 to 9 hours rest. And I basically just pulled out all the stops on this one, made sure I cooked it low and slow, maintained the fires really well. I even added some beef tallow for good measure at the end of all of this. So I did the foil boat, then wrapped it in butcher paper with beef tallow. I did like everything that I thought like would actually do the trick. The only thing this time around that I wasn't too sure about was the temperature to pull the brisket off of the smoker in preparation for an extended hold time. And I talked a little bit about this in my oven holding video, which is listed right here somewhere, where I wasn't too sure if I did the right thing by cooking it up to the temperature and tenderness that I wanted, but then held it for 10 hours. I was wondering if that actually in the end actually dried out the brisket a little bit too much. So this time on this one, I actually pulled it off a little bit sooner. So it was almost probe tender. I think it was temping around 205, but at that point is when I pulled it off of the smoker and then moved it over to the butcher paper after the temperature had dropped some tallow on there, wrapped it back up again, and then held it in the oven. Now, Franklin's reheating instructions are pretty straightforward. Once you unpack the brisket, you're dropping a few slices of butter, which are optional, but That's how I saw Jeremy Yoder reheat it once, and so I was like, why not? Butter makes everything better, just like bacon. So I took 3 slices of butter on there, set it to 275, and monitored the internal temperature. So once both of these briskets were ready to be served, I went ahead and just sliced into both. And if you can see right here, right off the bat, in Franklin's brisket, it is just so tender. And even just cutting through Franklin's brisket, you could just smell already that light kiss of smoke. It wasn't overwhelming, and the seasoning seemed great. And then of course I had my brisket coming out as well. Just kind of getting into it, it felt a little bit tougher than I had hoped, which made me think, again, back to what I was saying earlier, I think I do need to anticipate the hold time, yes, but take it up a little bit more before I put it into that extended hold. But either way, the smell was great. I love the bark on it. And so I went ahead and just, cut it up, threw it on the 2 platters, and here we go. So I had my friend Joe over, Sterling over, and you've probably seen them in a couple of videos if you've been watching the channel, and some other friends and family were around. And so without telling them which one was which, I just said, you know what, have at it. There was no checklist like a judge would have. It was just, what do you prefer? Which one do you think is Franklin's? And go. Okay, so it was actually a very good and shocking surprise is that it wasn't very clear which brisket was whose. Get that? Whose. I mean, right off the bat though, I'll tell you, like, my personal kind of take on the Franklin's brisket is it was just incredibly tender. It was just so much more tender than the one that I made. And I'm talking about samples from the leanest part of the lean to the fattiest part of the moist. Like, overall, the Franklin's brisket was just way more tender. However, when it comes to bark, when it comes to just the overall seasoning and flavor, personally, I preferred the one that I made. And so if I could somehow, maybe next time again, kind of tweak it a little bit, pull it off a little bit later from the cooker, and then do the extended rest, like maybe I can start getting into that final sweet spot where I get a little bit of everything that I want. But again, it was just really cool for everyone to sample the briskets and talk about how either close they were or they couldn't really tell which one was which. Folks who preferred the Franklin brisket definitely were mentioning how tender it was. And so that was the main thing that they noted. However, they did also know that the bark and the seasoning on the brisket that I made was actually a little bit better. And so there was kind of like a 50-50 kind of guess on which one was the one I made in my backyard versus the one that was made by Franklin's. Woo! So anyhow, after 4 years, I have finally had a chance to try a Franklin brisket. Granted, it's not in person at the restaurant, it was mail ordered over. But to say that I finally got to try it, I get to finally recognize what the hype is all about. And to recognize that this was a brisket that was cooked and then packed with, I think, dry ice or whatever, sent all the way to here to California, reheated, and it still tasted that dang good. I think that just says a lot about the quality of brisket that comes out of Franklin's. This last shot is just a picture of the aftermath. Everyone took a little bit home, but we were definitely pretty stuffed and feeling pretty heavy from all that brisket we tried. But overall, this was an incredible experience. I would love to hear actually some of your personal experiences. If you've tried a Franklin's brisket before, or any kind of famous brisket, like, how do you think like your briskets have compared? And love to hear a little bit about your journey and how you've grown in your own abilities to cook smoked barbecue or just barbecue in general. Alright y'all, so that's about it for this video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, and we will see you on the next video.
Daddy,
Bye-bye.
you better give me some of that meat. Give me that
I'm
meat.
not trying to use what you